Hello everyone, today I'll be looking at the track Demon Ruination from Asura's Wrath. And before we get started, I will show you a brief clip of the track so you know what it sounds like. Alright, and so now we'll look at the actual gameplay footage.
Time for your next lesson! Now, let's see you shoot this style! That's it! That's the spirit! Ha ha! Not bad! I never said stop!
Alright. Now before I take a look at the graphs, I'd like to look at the pros analysis, as there's some things in there that I believe are important to understand. So, the game was made in 2012 and was published by Capcom. The composer for the entire soundtrack, except for two of the tracks, is Chikayo Fukuda. She's a famous Japanese composer, known for other games like Naruto Shippuden, Ultimate Ninja Storm, the Dot Hack series, and a more recent game would be the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle series, or just a singular game. While the majority of the soundtrack is original, like I said, the second and fourth movement from Symphony No. 9 in E minor is taken as a temp track for one of the boss battles in the game. The majority of the instruments in the soundtrack are analog, and in this specific track there is two electronic instruments that are meshed in together with the rest of the analog instruments. And now here are the graphs. Here in amplitude statistics, we can see that the left and right channel max out at around negative 1.8668 decibels. And this matched up with the spectrogram, we can see that this track isn't all that loud. There's a lot of low valley points where the track fades out or where it's switching between sections. And this makes it, I think, a little more interesting than tracks that are just loud all the time. And it may be a sign of a good mix, although that's debatable, I think. Here we see the structure. The track is made up of 4 sections, which are looped over and over. Of course, in the CD soundtrack, it only loops twice, and then it fades out during the third A section. Here are the 2 frequency analysis charts. This one for section B, and this one's for section A. Section A having guitar, electric bass, drum kit, MIDI drums, the high frequencies, which are one of the digital instruments, vocals and chorus, and the string section. Section B has electric bass, drum kit, male vocals, and MIDI drums. And here we have the legend, so you know which one is which. And here we see the instrument analysis, which is going to be by far the longest section in this analysis. And so in terms of stereo field, not a lot of instruments are in the background per se, and that's mostly because in the mix itself, a lot of sections put more emphasis on some instruments than others, and so some instruments will drop out, others will drop in. The main example of this would be the B section, where the bass takes the lead role. I wouldn't say melody. It becomes a lead instrument in the track, rather than it being the guitar or the drum kit. there's a total of 7 instruments. There's the electric guitar, electric bass, the analog drum kit, the electronic drum kit, the male vocals, the string section, and the high frequency tone. The 2 electronic instruments, of course, being the electronic drum kit and the high frequency tone. Let's talk about the tone for a bit. So the tone is really interesting to me because it has the same timbre throughout the entire track. It only shows up during sections A, C, and D, but it's different enough in the sections where it deserves to have its own frequency ranges, because it goes from a lower frequency range to a higher frequency range. Again, I believe to avoid monotony, but to also create like kind of a weird, I wouldn't say shepherd's tone, but a very weird sine wave that just comes in through the mix. And now we'll take a look at the stereo field. So the electric guitar is panned slightly right to the foreground, electric bass is slightly left to the middle ground, drum kit and percussion is made through slight left and center in the foreground, and in the opposite direction on the slight right and center in the foreground is the electronic percussion, so we see a balance there. The male vocals are panned slightly left and right in an almost like stereo way you could see in Pro Tools. The string section is panned slightly right and left as well in the middle ground. And the high frequency tones are panned slightly left in the middle ground, although, and when we get into automation, they do pan from that left to the center, creating a sweeping motion with the frequency itself. So let's start off from the top again. In automation, the electric guitar has a sting in the C section that can be heard panning hard left, while the D section has it panned in the center rather than slight right. So the electric guitar in the C section has a sting, which can be heard panned hard left, while in the D section it is panned in the center of the mix. The electric bass doesn't have any major automation. In the B section, like I said, it does gain a lot more importance. Or instead of amplitude, it's the mix accommodates where it is, so that it's more important in the mix. The analog drum kit doesn't have any much automation. The electronic drum kit, however, does use a different set of samples in section C to break up the monotony of its library. The male vocals don't have any automation. The string section does in fact have an automation where during the A section the strings seem to pan from right to left, and then the high frequency tone, we've already talked about it, pans from slight left to center. In terms of effects, to wrap it up, we have all of the instruments seem to have EQ and reverb. The more interesting aspects would be the electronic percussion having a bandpass EQ, the male vocals having a high pass near 250 Hz, the string section having a slight high pass EQ, the frequency tone, of course, having a high pass EQ to keep all those highs. There's not a lot of lows in that section. And I believe that is it. And now, before I leave, I'd like to leave you with one more reflection on how this track works. While a lot of the tracks in Asura's Wrath tend to have high melodic content, I hope that doesn't sound super pretentious, or like a main melody, this track actually doesn't have a main melody. It's mostly just made to be used in the background. In other words, while a lot of tracks have a significance to the story or significance to everything that's happening on screen, tracks like In Your Belief or even the Symphony No. 9 temp track, this track doesn't have anything that makes it stand out specifically, to me at least. Melodically, it doesn't have that much. Rhythmically, it serves the purpose of being an exciting fighting track that you can keep in the background so you don't just listen to the pure sound effects. And that is also evident in the mixing, where all of the sound effects are in the foreground while the track itself can mix between the background and middle ground depending on how loud the other effects or the speaking parts of the game are. And that has been my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you very much.